Now, I think it's pretty safe to say that the future of the Star Wars franchise is ever evolving, given that we have, of course, a lot of Legends material getting revived by John, George, and Dave, as well as, of course, the Disney executives, really keeping an open mind on things when it comes to the Star Wars franchise to really fulfill the fans' needs. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new, and like this video to see future Star Wars updates. I'm also on Twitter at Mike01. I thank you also very much for the great and kind support. Now, given that Bob Iger has been really in touch with the fans for the past couple of months, really trying to hype up the fan base for not just Star Wars Ahsoka, but also for Star Wars Celebration and what's on the horizon for D23's announcements regarding, of course, all the upcoming shows and stuff around those lines. But we also have a lot of things that Bob Iger was able to talk about that's very reassuring when it comes to the future of Star Wars and where it's heading. Now, regardless, we do know that the fans, as of today, still remain very much divided. There's a lot of fans that are still repulsed by what Disney has done to the franchise. Meanwhile, other fans are enjoying what they're actually, watching and are hopeful about the future and where it's all going. So, what Bob Iger recently had to say, I think is probably one of the greatest announcements for Star Wars in a very long time, and something that is much needed and has been needed for years now. Something that should have been done right from the get-go. We're going to be going into every single thing about what Iger had to say about the future of Star Wars and exactly how they are going to basically change things up by ways of respecting the fan base in a very, way that should have been done right when they were making The Force Awakens. So let's get right into this. Now, on top of this, alright, given that, of course, with Disney CEO Bob Iger planning out several ways to bring Star Wars back on track, he recently engaged in an interview where he was able to take, of course, and make a very reassuring announcement to the fandom. Bob Iger went on to state the following: "We feel one of our biggest mistakes that we made with this franchise in past years was excluding the very person who created it. George has been a gem to us and the opportunities that he provided us, and I am so proud to say that we will be having him involved in many of our upcoming installments for the Star Wars brand. We felt it was best to use the visionary who created the magic himself that he did so many years ago, and we realized that we should pay respect to the fans that have supported the franchise from day one. I am very excited to say that most of his help with us is going to be for many of our 2024 releases, and we have some very exciting things to announce later this year involving Mr. Lucas. In the beginning, when we were crafting the sequels, we excluded George as we were frightened over another similar backlash to what happened with the prequels." Now let me stop here for 1 second about what Iger is saying, is that this kind of goes hand in hand with what Iger said about how he was playing things safe when it came to the sequel trilogy movies, and how they really wanted to play things safe when it came to the locations, the characters, everything around those lines, alright? So, when you look at stuff like that, and the fact that we have people like George getting more involved with John and Dave's work, with the Lucasfilm creatives, and really kind of just propelling things in a better future, is very reassuring. And given that Bob Iger is now putting this out there, that this is something that they should have done years ago, he's finally owning his mistakes. At least I can give him some kind of credit for that, even though I'm not a fan of the guy, and I still am not to this day, but I give him credit for specific things, like allowing John and Dave to do what they have to do, giving them promotions, giving them specific privileges over at Lucasfilm, and this, allowing George to work on many of the upcoming releases for 2024. Now, that's not to say that he had no hand in Ahsoka. He actually did have a lot of actual involvement in the Star Wars Ahsoka series, which is exactly why I keep saying that this is the one that I am mostly looking forward to, because it's going to feel the most like Star Wars and have that real cinema-esque style to it all. So, on to the next thing about what Bob Iger had to say, is that, of course, on top of all of this, alright, he goes on to elaborate, separate, of course, from what Iger said here to the fans. Let me just say one thing, is that George is really trying to kind of give us the same exact tone that we got from the originals and the prequels, and kind of finding a right balance between those two and how that can be applied to shows like Ahsoka and more to come. Now, apart from what Iger had to say about all of this, behind closed doors, the biggest addition to, of course, George coming back on board over at Lucasfilm is that Disney is full on about to place him in as head of the story group by 2024, with John and Dave taking over many other departments of the company at Disney, and how it is now in the process of cleaning up house over at Lucasfilm. That's going to take place over the course of the next 2 whole years. George will also be co-writing, of course, the new Star Wars Underworld series, which was Lucas's original attempt at the first live-action show that got canceled back in 2007, that served as a sequel to Revenge of the Sith, that is now being picked up again by Disney to use as a love letter to George and the fans, that they intend to release sometime by 2025 or 26, the latest. Now, before I get to the last bit here, is that what I like so much about this is the fact that not only are they getting him involved in a lot of upcoming projects, but they are also literally igniting, reviving Star Wars Underworld. This was the original, actual, first live-action series back in the day that was going to be done by George, a combination of Blade Runner and Star Wars, what's not to like, very interesting combo, taking place in the depths of Coruscant, showcasing crime syndicates, bounty hunters, Jedi in hiding, post-Order 66 style, stuff like that. And that's exactly what they're going to be doing in this revived version of Star Wars Underworld. But I digress. On to the next thing here is that additionally, of course, Lucas will also be directing a couple of scenes for The Mandalorian Season 4, one of which is set to involve Anakin Skywalker during Order 66, as Hayden has already been attached to Mando 4 by John and Dave. Now, the thing that I like so much about George Lucas is that he has this general idea of what Star Wars is meant to be. Say what you will about the prequels, some of you guys out there that may still dislike them to this day. To me, and I'm sure a lot of you guys out there will agree, the prequels feel more like Star Wars in spirit than the sequels ever will be. And that's just, to me, very apparent and clear. I would never take back what I say here. I really do fully stand by that, is that there's something there about George Lucas's treatment of Star Wars versus Disney's Star Wars treatment on the sequels. But there's also bits and pieces, and I've said this many times throughout 7, 8, and 9, where it has its moments where it kind of has a little glimmer of traditional Star Wars here and there, but not on a consistent basis, so to speak. So I'm very much, enthralled about what's coming out and about by George, Bob Iger, really kind of teasing things like this for the fans. This is the best thing that we need, and something that fans have actually been asking for. So anyways, fill me in below in the comments, guys, what you all have to say about this, and if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel. I thank you all so very much for the kind support, and I'll catch you guys next time.